Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivamB. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic together. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Architect and Quiver Time and by my patrons at patreon.com/ShivamB. Today, I have returning guest and very dear friend of the show, my boy, EK Eric, who is,
back from the dead.
I miss you, man. I love you. I love talking to you in the olden days.
We're both busy. Like there's a lot of cards coming out, a lot of things,
a lot of shows to do, man. And you've been working on all of the greatest shows in Commander right now with like
all two of them. I scaled back.
Well, it's good though, because then you're not like killing yourself. But
we keep busy, but we have fun and we sleep.
Isn't that a nice thought? Like work-life balance, the idea of it.
Never ask me if you asked me that like a year ago, I wouldn't have thought about it. But like reality hits you like a ton of bricks.
It turns out we're older and we need to sleep once in a while.
Yeah.
But it's good that you were able to take a break from working in the Olivia mines to come here and chat with me about one of my favorite topics, surely to be uncontroversial.
No, God, no. And I'm pretty sure I even prefaced this in the DMs before. It's like, this is going to be a super light, breezy, like Crunchwrap Supreme kind of conversation that is sure not to ruffle any feathers. Like zero problems whatsoever. Twitter's not going to go crazy. The YouTube comments aren't going to go crazy. Like, everyone's going to agree with everything that we have to say. Like, this is just going to get set in stone and set a standard. Like, no big deal.
So basically, a couple of months ago, I made a tweet where I said, I think that there are simultaneously too many options in Commander and too many powerful. It would be weird if you left them out cards that homogenize it. And you were like, I'll bet I have an hour we could chat about that.
I literally, before we hopped on to do the interview, I had this exact conversation for 4 hours.
Well, I mean, it is a good conversation.
I practiced. We can distill this down and get people on with their day.
So here's the basics of this idea here, right? Like, Commander is both a system of like, okay, so at the core, Commander is 60 cards and 40 lands, give or take a few. Obviously, we can go up or down, but roughly speaking, and there's been an argument for, let's say, as long as I've been playing Commander, where, oh no, there are too many cards that Wizards has printed that are fixed and you're forced to play, and they take the creativity out, and it's not Elder Dragon Highlander anymore, and oh no, my Alara cards don't work. But ultimately, the core of it is WotC is printing too many good cards that we have to play because our decks don't work if we don't. But then at the same time, they're printing too many weirdo cards that do all sorts of niche things. And we're just being drowned in options to the point that you're taking cards out of your deck before you've even had a chance to play them, just because the next set came out 3 weeks later with 4 new better cards for your deck. So this is a weird.
I'm gonna personalize this conversation for you and use your Soldiers deck as an example, because how many cards do you just have like exercise right now? How many cards do you have on your desk right now that you're just trying to like think about putting in your Soldiers deck right now? Because the people watching this on video just saw a like 2.5 to 3 inch stack of cards, and those are the soldier cards that Shivam wants to put into his current soldier deck. And my thinking is just make a second
3 more soldier decks, right?
Yeah. I mean, not everyone has the luxury of making another deck. You know, you have your one deck, or maybe like you just don't have the time to play 3 decks. Right. So you keep your 1 or 2 decks and call it a day.
Right. I mean, one thing I learned is, and I think the lesson to me was taught to me when the zombie deck came out, the zombie precon came out with Wilheld. And that deck would just, Like I had been building my Grim deck for a decade, and that will help precon in one fell swoop was just better, strictly better than my entire decade of work on this stupid deck. But I made a decision. I'm like, you know what? Like, and it was through talking to you, through talking to Commander Mechanic and other people that basically like my deck is my deck. It is my
Yeah.
personalized deck. It is decks cards I like. I'm just gonna lock it. I'm going to like maybe I'll foil it out. Maybe I'll just if once in a while a new land or something comes out that's really cool, I'll put it in. But otherwise, that deck exists as a moment in time. Every time I play it, I smile. It's great. I can build another zombie deck. I can build another soldiers deck. They won't be my super soldiers deck or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It's like one thing I think that it was the hardest lesson for me to learn is that it's okay to just not play every card. Like it's okay that there are cards that exist that I just haven't gotten a chance to play. It's fine. Like you can just sit and enjoy the stuff you have because like that's why it's in the deck in the first place, right?
The macro answer to it all is you just have to know what you want to get out of it. Do you want to play optimally with like all the hottest new cards and you know the Eldrazi this and the Mana Crypts that? If you do, yeah, cool. I love that for you. If you don't and you want to hang out in the Betrayers of Kamigawa and Portal 3 Kingdoms bulk bins with me, love that too. But like the format is so big and there are so many cards that it's gonna be and it's gonna mean a different thing to every different person essentially. Yeah. So you just have to figure out where you fit in that piece of the puzzle, and it's like you figured that out in a sense where yeah, like I could make a Will Held deck, but Grim was like my first deck, and it has a sentimental kind of bit of history, and like your Tajik deck is a sentimental bit too, and like that's what's important to you. Playing, I don't know, Myrel, Shield of Argive, and
well, I mean, Myrel's in like, the deck, right?
Okay, but they're really really good. I'm just trying to think like what are like the most insane soldiers that we've seen printed in like the last year and a half.
They just printed that guy in Clue, Commander Mustard, whatever.
Yeah,
just
Colonel
like
Mustard.
Insanely good like soldier deck. And I think ultimately, like one of the things that just occurred to me, I mean, like I'm not saying you should stop building your deck. You should get your deck to a place where you're happy with it. You should get your deck to a place where it's like my soldiers deck. It took many years of actual work and like upgrades and tinkering with it to get to a place where I'm like, this is what I want this deck to do, right? But once I got there and like they kept printing like better red and white decks or things, people would be throwing cards like, oh man, you should absolutely have Welcoming Vampire in there. You'll just draw so many cards. I'm like, well, it's not a soldier. It's not going to my soldier deck. It's like, why are you playing bad cards then? And
they're not bad. They're just not the cards that they're just not the cards that you want to play.
Do.
Yes.
Like, and I think that's what prompted my idea in the first place is like, I do not have a ton of sympathy for people who are like, I must play these cards. I need to keep up with the speed of everything. You got to do something and ban all these other cards so that, I'm like, dude, no, this is a commander. You have a choice in what's in your deck. You are the one
who have free will.
Yeah. Like you are the one who is responsible for what goes into your deck. And you are the one who is responsible for the experience that comes out of your deck. Right? Like, and that's something that I can't emphasize enough. It's like, whatever you're putting in there, you put in there. You made these decisions, and like, you don't need to like keep up with anybody. If the deck is doing what you want, then rad, you've already won. Like,
you also don't need to like justify your decisions either.
Absolutely not. Like, you just like, why is that card in there? Because I like the art, because I like the color, because I like the name of it. Who cares? Like, I have the one counter spell I have in Grimgrin is didn't say please. And why? Because it makes me laugh every time I say
You didn't say please.
It's a dumb, it's not nearly the best counter that could be in that slot by any means. It's the funniest one for me. You know?
I mean, I think about my Dissa the Restless deck that I built for Modern Horizons. I was like, yeah, you can like play the like I'm playing like the hermit druid kind of stuff, but there's a card. It's switch your graveyard with your library.
Yes.
I'm like,
Yes.
I could do that. It's I don't have the encyclopedic knowledge of like random Urza's Saga sorceries.
Yes.
I know
I
it's like
remember
7 or 8
that.
mana, but like, yeah, like I could do that, or I could play this 5 mana 4/3 horsemanship. I'm gonna do that. That sounds like way more fun. Because yeah, like a lot of the super staples. Because I think there's too many cards to have. There's too many cards in Commander that are legal. Just say like
Morality shift.
morality shift. That's the one. There you go. Bonus points to the people who figured it out on the spot.
Oh,
By the
you know
way,
they're screaming at the phones.
you're getting their engagement. That's what matters. That's the secret.
I love my listeners.
Like,
But yeah, like go ahead.
Stuff like that. It's like it's cool once. You do it twice, and it's yeah. I did the thing, and then you like switch it out for another card, or you can just like play something else, like play a card that speaks to you on a spiritual level, like your 2/1s with shadow, or like God knows what, like Douthie Embrace. Like who cares? Like where you just have these like microcosms of silliness.
Yeah,
And
I just think about the fact that like I it just irks me so much when people are looking through your deck. It's like, why are you playing this card? The strictly better card exists. I'm like, what does strictly better mean? Like,
yeah, well, that I mean, that's at the very root of this conversation too. It's like it's entirely subjective.
right. It's like, what do you want to do out of the deck? What is my goal that every time I open a card, like I take a card off the top, I look at it and smile? Is my goal that I want to win like immediately?
Yeah.
What is your point? What is your hope out of this deck? And
Why are you sitting down at this table?
like,
What are you trying to get out of this?
I get so annoyed when people look at like I have, for instance, Gilded Lotus in one of my random decks, right? Gilded Lotus is not a good modern Magic card. It's pay 5, tap for 3. It's like,
yeah, we have
fine.
Scepter of Eternal Glory, which does the same thing for 4 mana.
Yeah, but you know what? Gilded Lotus was cool when I built the deck, and I like it.
Yeah, that was an expensive card.
It was, yeah, like that.
Ago.
Like freaking Chromatic Lantern. Everybody's like, man, all it does is make your land into every land. That's it. And I'm like, yeah, but it's cool.
It's cool, and like that invention is gorgeous.
Yeah, like so what? Like I don't understand the mentality of people who want to go and look at decks and be like, hey, your pet card sucks. Like,
I don't think you need to understand it either, because their opinion doesn't really affect you.
No, it's just
like, it's like a perfectly valid, like, I know that's like that might come off as dismissive, but like, you like the stuff you like. You play the cards that you want to play.
Mm-hmm.
There's inevitably going to be other like-minded people who want to play the same kind of Magic that you do. And in this day and age where Spell Table exists and like extensive online communities constantly playing games exist, you will find those people.
Yeah, it's just like when somebody, I mean, I guess the one of the weird fraught moments is like when you take your deck and you're like, hey, can you give me your advice or give me your thoughts on your deck? And they immediately pull out your pet cards like, this things are garbage. It's like, okay, yeah, I understand that. However,
I'm going to preface this with, have you watched The Bear season 3?
No.
Okay. This is not really a spoiler thing because it happens in like the first 5 minutes of the first episode of season 3.
Sure.
But Carmi is making this list of non-negotiables, things that have to happen at the restaurant. And I'm likening this to the way that I build decks, where I have non-negotiable cards. It's like, this is the reason why I'm building this deck in the first place.
Right.
No matter what, no matter how hard we try, no matter how much we want to cut this card is staying in, and we are doing our darndest to make sure that this is the star of the show.
Yes.
And the card pool is so deep that you can make any card work to a certain point. But like, if you really try, that pet card can look like the most heinous card, the most bannable card that you have ever seen. It takes a little bit of work, and some cards are harder to make work than others, but everything works. Everything can cook. Everyone can cook.
I mean, that's one of the things I think that one of the stories that always sticks to me is like I had built a Brea deck when Brea first came out, and I was still new to building my own decks. I built a Brea deck and I got a bunch of cards, and I was intending to make Thopter tribal. My goal was I'm going to make a full-on Thopters deck. Thopter matters. It's going to be super cool. It's going to make a ton of tokens. It's going to be great. It's going to be a very Shivam deck. And I asked a friend to help, or an acquaintance rather, to help me out because he'd been playing Commander a lot longer. And the first thing he did was take all the pet cards and all the old cards and all the
all of the Thopter cards,
and they're all just shoved to the side and replaced with like basically turned it into like this artifact good stuff turbo
Bomberman.
Deck. And I was just like, yeah, it's just like super good at tutoring artifacts and playing. It's a like incredibly good artifact pseudo aristocracy deck from like 2016 or whatever. But what it wasn't,
it's not the deck.
It wasn't my Ornithopters deck. And
it's why I think if people are soliciting for advice for a commander deck, it's hey, I'm looking for advice on this deck. I want it to do this, or I want it to be built around XYZ set of cards. Like, we need to be more detailed in what help we're actually looking for, or like what we're actually trying to accomplish.
Yes.
Because then lo and behold, people will actually honor that. They will respect that, and they will actually give you the advice and the guidance that you're looking for.
Yeah, because like
novel concept.
Well, because if you hand somebody a pile of cards and say like, "Hey, figure this out," the first thing they're going to do is build their own framework because you didn't give them anything to work with, and they're going to be like, "Oh, well, looking at this commander, this is what I would do. All of these cards don't work with it." And then you're like, "Wait a second, I put in all those cards because I've got this B theme I didn't even tell you about."
Yeah.
And like, for instance, when I've like asked you or Chris for help, both of you have come to me as like, "Okay, before I even look at this, tell me what are the cards in here that are just immovable,
the non-negotiables,
the things that are just literally unmesswithable." And I'm like, this card here means a lot to me for X, Y, and Z reasons. I want it in here for this one thing. Great, we're done, and we can move from there, and we can build and figure out how to make that thing the star, right? Like,
and it usually happens pretty easy because we know what we're getting ourselves into going into the thing in the first place.
Like to use
whereas otherwise we're trying to like figure this out. It's like, I understand that this is in here for a reason, but I don't get it.
Yeah, like for instance, like to use a concrete example, the most recent deck I built was Kadir. And I built Kadir, which is like, for those of you who don't know, Kadir is a creature that says like, whenever it deals damage to a player, for each token you control, create a 1/1 rabbit creature token. So basically, if you've got a bunch of tokens in play already and you attack, you get that many tokens as rabbits, and it just multiplies and spirals out of control. And my entire gimmick was this card from Darksteel called Nemesis Mask, which is a card that says all creatures able to block equipped creature do so. It's lure that I can move around. And everybody would look at this and they would look at Kadir and they'd be like, I don't understand what is this card doing here? Why is it here? And I'm like, well, the gimmick of the deck is that Kadir wears all these other equipments and mega swords and everything else, and she sends in one rabbit with a Nemesis Mask. The rabbit distracts all the big scary monsters, and then Kadir rumbles in and Voltrons you to death. And once I explain that, everybody's eyes go like, oh, and suddenly all the advice they give me becomes entirely different because now they get what the deck is doing. And suddenly, like, this card that was obviously a number one cut because it had nothing to do with nothing is the linchpin of the deck. But they didn't know that until I tell them that, right?
It's almost like communication is a virtue and a like very good skill to have.
Especially,
it's not something that everyone's going to be able to do perfectly. And it's like I said, it's a skill. You have to practice it and you have to work on it. And it's a two-way street as well. So responding to somebody is going to take practice. Like, you're not necessarily going to be spot on every time, but you're trying your best, and that's what matters.
Yeah. But, and it's a matter oh, goodness gracious me. It's a matter of like just like understanding, and like it ties back into this original topic of staples and stuff, in that we are faced with right now a weird crossroads where it looks like WotC is just printing out infinite cards that must be in every deck all the time, and that's not true. Like, one thing that's been irking me a lot is like there's a lot of 3 mana rocks that have been coming up. And 3 mana rocks, and WotC has been making a concerted effort to make 3 mana rocks into something good, something interesting, something fun. And people are like, oh no, 3 mana rocks are way too slow. You got to be playing talismans. You got to be playing that stupid, like, relic. What the hell is that one? That's like a thought vessel or whatever it
Yeah,
is, right?
Thought
Like,
Vessel, Arcane Signet,
yeah, all those random 2 mana
Felwar
rocks.
Stone.
They do nothing, but they just give you a mana for 2 mana. And I'm like, yeah, but what if I want this cool other secondary effect that comes along with this thing? And they're like, why would you want that? You could win. And I'm like, yeah, but I could use Curse Mirror to make a copy of something right away and it would be sick. Like, or that new one from Bloomborough that just came out that gives everything an anthem for whatever creature type you have.
That
So
I
good.
saw that earlier this morning, and I was like, "That's for all the haters out there."
Right?
It doesn't read in such a sense where it's like you're gonna like 3 mana rocks,
no
matter what. We're gonna make you like them. Like, no, it's just like that is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
You want me to play 3 mana rocks? Say no more. I will jam that into my deck happily. But it's not on a level of I absolutely need this card in every single one of my decks. It only works in decks that are built around a creature type.
Yeah. And guess what? Every deck I build is done. Is built around creature type.
That's your style. It's not my style necessarily, but I mean, I'm weird. Like,
you build decks that I really enjoy, man. You build decks.
I build decks on a like esoteric, like spiritual level where it's like, hey, you know that commander that you really love or you really hate to love or you really hate? What if we made it play like that other commander that you really hate, but now you actually like it? My Saskia, my flavor of the week Saskia deck right now is a Saskia deck that is cosplaying as a Miram deck.
What?
It's a dragon clones deck.
4-color dragon clones deck?
Without blue.
What the hell is...
It works. It plays like a Miram deck.
That's dude,
but it's not Miram, and it makes people like Miram.
Miram is such a disgusting card. It's such a disgusting card. But
like, I want to build a deck that you've never seen, or I want you to play a game of Commander that you have never experienced before. And like that was something that Sheldon always touted as a thing that like I was like, that was my thing. I was just like, you never know what you're getting yourself into, but you're gonna like it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm gonna show you the power of 1998 because I don't build a lot of decks, but I put a lot of time into the decks that I build because I figure out exactly what I want to do. I learned how to use Scryfall Advanced Search to an extreme and like learned all of the syntax and shortcuts and stuff like that to find exactly what I was looking for. And not every player is necessarily going to have either the time to learn how to do that or just the want to do it.
Right.
And like I was talking to a friend earlier this evening where even from the on-ramp of Commander, we're introducing players on the on-ramp to the format with staples up front. Because if you look at a lot of the precons, most of the precons have the same like 25 non-lands rotated between them every single set. So we're telling them like, hey, every green deck has a Cultivate. Hey, every red deck has a Blasphemous Act. So that suddenly that 60-40 is like 59-40. And at a certain point, that slippery slope on the on-ramp becomes, hey, your 100-card deck is really only like 44 cards.
Right.
And the format that's touted to have all of this creativity and freedom suddenly doesn't have it. And like, this is what we're showing newer players. This is how we're introducing people to the format where it's just like, yeah, like you have your vegetables and like they make your deck work, and you do need those. Like 100%, you do need good cards to make your deck work.
Right.
But that like extra other little bit, they're like, hey, like I've got all of these vegetables, but I don't have this card. And like every single deck that I've ever bought or every single deck that I've ever played has this card. So I need this too. And it's just a slippery slope. And suddenly you end up with a good stuff pile.
Oh God, that is like my biggest nightmare is like when you sit there and you're building a deck, like even at this level of experience of deck building that I've done, for instance, I was starting to build a Council of Four deck because I've never built an Azorius deck, and I was just
you
like,
and
okay,
like 6 other people that I know right now. I swear to God,
dude, I
are
cracked
building
it.
that commander.
I cracked it at the Commander sealed at Command Fest San Francisco. That was like the commander I ended up in the draft that I was playing, and I just ended up building a deck around it, and it turned out to be super fun. And I was like, I don't play blue white normally, and I haven't since 1994.
That is a very you way of playing blue white though.
Sure,
so
it's
it makes
like,
sense.
It makes tokens, it draws cards. What else do I want? But I was like sitting there and I started building it, and I realized what I was doing was either just emulating the EDH rec list or just building blue white good stuff. And that's not what I want, right? Like that's not the goal here. And you've got to be able to recognize when you're getting to that point and either stop yourself and be like, okay, hang on, let's reevaluate where this is going. Let's see what I actually want to do, or own it all the way and do like, I'm going to do a good stuff deck because that's fine. It's fine to play your favorite cards.
I definitely have a good stuff deck. It animates lands, but it is a good stuff deck built on animating lands. Like even your good stuff pile is going to have a little bit of spice because everyone is going to have that like handful of cards that they think is good that no one else thinks is good, and those are the types of cards that we can lean into if we are trying to play optimal. Like not everyone is going to agree that every card is good, and that's where the diversity in even like that section of the format is rooted in. It's like it's the internet. It's the nerdy gaming community. No one's gonna agree on everything.
Hell no. But I think now that you're talking, I can remember exactly what it was that set me off. There was a post that somebody had made where it was effectively something like, if you're playing CDH and you're not playing one of the meta decks, you're wasting your time. Just grab a meta deck and play the thing that actually
remember
work.
that post.
And I was just like, this is the antithesis of what I want out of Commander. This is the exact 100% opposite of what I want to see, and that is a horrifying message to see. Like
you can even just take the messaging out of context, and that like if you're not playing like one of the top 20 commanders on EDA track, don't even bother. Like if you're not playing Atraxa, if you're not playing Sisay or Morophon, like if every creature type deck that you're playing is not a Morophon deck, why bother? If every dragon deck ever isn't an Dragon deck, why would you even play dragons? Like it's such a slippery slope.
It's such a frustrating one. It's so annoying to me because of the fact that it's just like, come on, dude, this is Commander. The whole point is to show off dumb stuff that you got from all over the place. Like the whole goddamn point of the format is that we found some weirdo card from 25 years ago that works with this great card from 12 years ago, and they do a thing nobody's ever seen before, and it's amazing. Right? Like that's what I want. Like that's what we should be doing.
I mean, I see, now you got me digging through my tweets right now. I tweeted a couple weeks ago, or it's probably like the evening after I replied to your initial tweet. Yeah, we are like, we're basically we're forensically piecing this conversation back together is what we're doing. But I was like, for all this talk of staples and for all this talk of like must plays and everything like that, I'm literally staring at a handful of cards in a deck, and I have a P3K card, a Saviors of Kamigawa card, and like a Modern Horizons 3 card in my hand all together, and they all combo together, and I think that's great. There's no other format that lets you do that. There's no other format where I can play a card from Legends unironically and not get laughed out of my shop.
Right?
Or like I can play a card from The Dark with a card from Midnight Vow and combo them together in a way that no one's ever seen, and like it makes somebody's night for whatever reason, or it ruins somebody's night in the best of ways because it's hilarious. There's
Oh
almost,
man.
for a lot of us, like in franchise players, I like, there's this term or this idea of like embracing the struggle. I think because cards are so good these days and because there's so many cards, I don't think the struggle really exists. It's really just like you can do anything you want. You just have to be willing to like make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
You can struggle, but in reality, you don't have to. In a sense that like you're still gonna have to work to make a card work. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't just like, you know, pick a card and suddenly everything's gonna be sunshine and rainbows. Like you got to put the work in on Scryfall, and like that's the struggle. The
Yeah,
going through
like
your bulk bin, finding that one card that you have that combos with this other card that you found in another box.
yeah,
Like
like I don't see
that's
anybody
it's
going
a
and picking.
physical struggle rather than a mental struggle with your cards.
Yeah, I don't see anybody going out to the dark and grabbing Martyr's Cry. Do you remember that sorcery, the double white that says all white creatures are removed from the game? Players must draw one card for each white creature they control that's lost in this manner, which is what we used to pass for white card draw. Exile your table, draw a bunch of cards. Now, I'll bet somebody in a tokens deck could easily deck themselves with that. Oh, ooh, that would be
See,
fun.
now
If you...
now you got me looking. Okay, this is a set. This is a card from Nemesis. We're going Shiv. This is like Shivam and Wheeler like 0.5. I play a card called Overlaid Terrain in my
I love that
Hazazen
card.
Shaper of Sand.
That's
This is
it.
sacrifice all of your lands.
Yes.
Lands you control have tap, add 2 mana of any one color. So it's like sacrifice all of your lands, but you have double mana for the rest of the game.
Dude, overlay terrain's a win con in my
In
tree folk deck.
Titania,
Yeah, in Titania.
absolutely.
Because it sacks the whole
Absolutely.
table. It's just like boom, let's go.
And that's actually, it's funny that you say that, like, oh, like this is an all-star in my XYZ deck, because that is always the antithesis to the hey, but what about this? Hey, what about that? It's like awesome. Like that's great. We should have more of that. And
Yes.
that's exactly why they've like shifted more towards the cards are still incredibly powerful, but they're incredibly powerful in particular decks, sort
Right.
of
Yes.
card design philosophy. I love that
Yes.
more than I love, hey, these cards are just like fairly above average, but you're going to want them in every single deck.
Right.
I want like that bonkers insane card that's only good in like 6 decks. I get more satisfaction out of that.
Yes, 100%. I've been telling WotC R&D for years now, literally, that's like, hey guys, please stop just making generically good staples that have to go in every deck and start making insanely powerful things that go in like one deck. You know?
They've been cooking for like 2 years at this point on
like
that.
Make
and
that
like,
one guy's day, you know, but
that one guy that has like, you know, we joke about like the Florbalorp deck that someone has, but then I look at all of these Bloomborough character names and it's basically all of that.
Yeah, they're all like Glup and Flap.
Glarb,
and
Alania, Helga, and Björk.
Look, all I'm doing is I'm thinking about that person who's been faithfully jamming Thraxamunder since like 2008, who just got Assassin's Creed, and all these Assassin Matters cards suddenly matter, and now they're like living the high life, you know, like let's go.
And like, there's God knows how many millions of Commander players out there in the world. Each one of those God knows how many millions of Commander players has that one deck where they see a card from a set and they're like, oh my gosh, that is perfect for my X. And just by sheer virtue of the law of large numbers, every card is suddenly for somebody.
Right?
And it's like that macro approach is not something that a lot of people take, which is why the job that like you guys on the CAG and the RC have is so difficult, because that is your job to think from a macro perspective like that first and foremost.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that just makes me happy whenever I sit down to play with other people's decks or see what they're doing, is like there are cards that I just have written off as unplayable or is just not interesting to me.
I love getting proven wrong.
That they're just taking into places I have never imagined. Yeah. And I'm like, this is the best feeling in the world. This is so much fun. Show me like the pet card that I just hate and just make me fall in love with this because it's insane. And
I want to go out of my way to make you think that this trash, garbage, unplayable card is the best thing that you have ever seen. And you are going to tweet at Shivam to please ban Ashes of the Fallen from Saviors of Kamigawa. Because it was so good in my, like, blippity bloop Vren the Relentless Rats deck. Like, please prove me wrong. I want to see it. Like, I geek out about that kind of thing so much. And more people have that than they think. Even if you don't think that you geek out about the ridiculous cards, or like seeing like people want to do powerful things, like people want to feel like they're doing things. You're doing weirder stuff than you think. Like, yeah, you can build a combo deck built around Smothering Tithe, but like there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. It's just, yeah, like, proud of you. But like Money Punch is a thing. The wheel and deal Smothering Tithe decks is just like, okay, you have all this mana and you've wheeled through your deck. Okay, now what? It's that now what, that extra layer of the, okay, you've played these staples, what are you doing with it? That's where you have your freedom. That's where, even if you're on the spikier side of things, you get to show off some creativity. You get to show off that like you did your homework, or you thought of something that someone else didn't, or you're proving someone wrong that this card that they thought was unplayable is the greatest thing that you've ever seen, and it's your pack card.
I think that's the thing that for instance, I really enjoy about MH3, that it's an insanely powerful set. I mean, obviously Nadu and everything, but it's got so many weird little just things that look insanely weak, except for the one person who needs that in their deck, who is now the happiest person on the planet. You know,
unless you're an Eldrazi player, and you're like getting, but like all those Cloud Post players, suddenly you're like, dude, you're playing Locust in Commander. Like, that was unheard of until a couple months ago.
I love that so much. But like the one that gets me, like there was a stupid combat trick, Gift of the Viper, which is just put a 1/1 counter, a reach counter, and death touch counter, and it's like, that's just a useless combat trick unless you're playing a deck that cares about types of counters or numbers of counters or whatever it is, or Ozolith or something. And it's like, whoa, this is insane.
Like suddenly this 1 mana get +1 is like 1 mana get +10.
Yeah, I know, it's so good.
And it's a twiddle.
Yes.
So like even that in of itself, like hey, more people play that in Selvala, or you can play that in, actually, like any of the Selvalas, they all have tap abilities. Never mind.
Selvala is just Selvala is a little broken, a lot broken.
It doesn't take much to make her good, but like this like random card technically relevant. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I think that the Wizards is starting to get the message of like, hey, less arcane signets and more like, you know, towers or like midnight clocks or whatever.
I'll reiterate. I think they got that message like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, but we're only just seeing the fruit now,
because they work a year, 2 years in advance.
Exactly.
Like they're already on like 2026, 2027, and we don't even know it. You know, like they're off designing, you know, universes beyond Marvel, or like universes beyond I don't know, like
Marvel
home shopping network. Like,
I don't know. I think about like, there's just so many insanely fun and weird narrow cards that have showed up that just make me happy to see.
You know where they're showing up the most is and there's like I find myself, and this is actually like just a really nice round talking point for this kind of conversation is Universes Beyond has like, if you have that deck, you're just like, I have like 2 more slots, and I just like I need to make weight on my deck is what my buddies and I have been calling it, like a boxer trying to make their weight limit, or like an MMA fighter trying to make a weight limit with their deck. You're just trying to make weight. Like I have a couple of sets that I just like tend to gravitate towards, they all happen to be universes beyond, because
Yeah.
they have no rules to play by outside of the fact that like this is a magic set. They can do whatever they want.
I have this theory.
So all of those like opportunities to make that like super niche card for that one deck, or like do an effect that they have never done before, or like make an unset card into a real legal card.
Yeah.
They can do that.
Yeah. I mean, I have this theory that like the reason that the Universe Beyond sets have been so good and so strong and so powerful comparatively to like other normalish sets is because when they're making a Universe Beyond, they send an email or something out to the team and they're like, who loves this franchise and wants to work on it? And there's inevitably somebody in there who's like, I've wanted to make Magic card for this thing since I was 8 years old. I've got a file 3 inches thick. I am born ready for this.
I already started working on this.
Oh yeah, like
sign me up.
And the reply to the email, they've already got the finished document just sent to them. Like, here's your set. Like,
yeah, like they're already building decks and playtesting a week later.
Oh yeah, and like
you can tell they are passion forward.
Yes, and that's why.
And that's not to say like normal sets aren't either. It's just there's like some kind of X factor with these Universes Beyond sets.
Well, because these guys know that they're not going to get another chance to go back to this world. Like I was talking to Ethan about the Warhammer stuff, and he's like, "Look, I knew that first off, these Warhammer decks, not only are people going to break them up, but people are going to just keep them whole because they've all got thematic vibe to them.
So I want to print matches, everything.
Yeah, so he's like, I want to print cards that are going to be like viable in a normal store in a context, so they don't just get WotC tier mono bases, but also I want to make these cards super cool and powerful and strong, so that these decks can continue to be played for years, because who knows when we're ever going to get another friggin' Warhammer deck, right?
Who knows? Licensing's complicated.
Did you hear the thing that Maro said, that like the Warhammer 40K decks were the best-selling Commander decks of all time until Fallout came out. And then the Fallout decks were the best-selling decks.
I'm genuinely not surprised by that.
Yeah, because they rule. I don't even like Fallout, and those decks are amazing. There's so many good cards.
My older brother is the Fallout fan of the family. So when I told him, he's like, he has not touched a Magic card in like 20 years. But I told him like, hey, they're making Fallout, and he's like, send me the art, send me the cards, because I want to see. I want to see what they do. I want to see the references. And he's just like, hey, like that's a deep cut. Like that card was made by someone who cares. That's made by a nerd. Like some of these even like the Doctor Who sagas specifically Who are very like.
I'm not
those
sure
those were made. You had sagas made on like individual like niche episodes.
Oh yeah,
that only a fan's fan would be able to design.
And these cards are also just like insanely cool anyways, just unto them. Like friggin' like what's her name, Rose? Like I don't know Rose anything Tyler at all about like Doctor Who, but Rose Tyler lets you like who's the lady that lets you River Salt?
Yeah, Rivers. Oh, from the bottom. Oh god.
Oh my god,
people
that card
hate
is so
that
cool.
in my Universes Beyond deck.
I have
a commander deck that is 100% Universes Beyond cards, including the lands. Everything has the triangle stamp. That's
awesome.
It is the nightmare of Twitter.
Who do you have as the commander?
I have Aragorn.
Okay, that is the one line I'll draw. The Aragorns that they put out, like all 12 of them are just overpowered. They're all busted. They all make me grumpy when I play against them. That is a personal
I don't want to have to do it, but like I wanted to play all of these different cards, and I didn't want to play 5 color.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
So the compromise was 4 color, no black. Which is like the most prevalent color in Universes Beyond. Like every Universes Beyond product is like based in black, but like we've kind of seen colors get a subtle rework or just like a reimagination over the last few years. Like they did the redesign of white, or like we need to like trickle in some powerful white cards over the next few years, and we're kind of starting to see the critical mass of that. They did that with red as well. Green would happen with like the start of Eldraine, and
Well,
green is green.
green's
But
doing just fine.
I firmly believe that black's redesign has been through the lens of Universes Beyond, because like if you look at the black cards in Universes Beyond, it's like the wildest stuff you've ever seen. It is unlike they are unlike any other black cards in the history of Magic.
And they're all really interesting and cool, and like
they don't fit in everything, but if you commit to their bit, you're gonna have a fun time.
Fact. Oh man, like I guess the ultimate takeaway here is like, you don't need to, like, it's okay not to have staples in your deck. It's okay not to follow the formula. Yeah, you can.
But it's also okay to have them too.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you don't need to pass a judgment on other people's playstyle based on what you're looking for out of the game. If you want to win and you want to play the meta deck, there's a list for them for a reason, right? Like,
here's the deck. If you want to embrace the struggle, we'll all be right there with you. Everyone's struggle, quote unquote, with their deck building just looks a little bit different.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think like there's so much in the game now that you could be playing that if you're just narrowing your gaze at just like the top best possible cards, you're missing out on like the infinite ocean of weirdness that's out there.
And some things take a little bit of work, but there's enough cards out there that if you put in that little bit of work, everything will be more than worth your while.
Like, I'm just thinking about the fact that people are still discovering cards from Baldur's Gate, right? Like, there's still cards in Baldur's Gate that are just showing up that people are like, what the hell is that
there's
card?
People discovering cards from like Amonkhet still, and Amonkhet was like a big inflection point and a big on-ramp for a lot of players, because that was the first set that released with Arena.
Well, in the beta for Arena, they had Kaladesh, but you're right. Amonkhet was the first one.
The first like big release inside of Arena was Amonkhet. They did their first big marketing push with that.
Yeah.
So the Arena on-rampers are in there, but like you have a lot of people that have come into Commander in like the last 4 years. They're still discovering 2018, 2017. Like they don't know that Teamer Energy was the hotness.
God,
they don't know that like
never going to be
like Grixis Scarab God with Glorybringer was like the coolest thing.
Oh, that's gross. Yes, I remember
they don't know that. And like they're discovering it. But it's a product of your like Magic or your Commander upbringing. Like, how did you learn? Who taught you? Because like the people that taught me were Kamigawa players and Mirrodin players. So we have the rule of every deck has to have a Kamigawa card. Every deck has to have like, you have that like inflection point, that on-ramp point. It's gonna ground you in your staples and just your compass within the format. And for some of us, that was when you had to put in some work to make anything work. And for other people, it's precons from Ikoria or Baldur's Gate, where you just got a whole bunch of dragons and made a Tiamat deck. Like, that's cool. Like, we just have to figure out a way. I don't want to say we have to figure out a way for us all to get along, because clearly we're all getting along.
We're getting along just fine, man. It works.
These 19,000 person Amsterdam events, like clearly people like this enough to travel halfway around the world times 19,000. Yeah, they're doing.
All I'm saying is
right.
like for instance, like my grounding is based in like 2011 era Commander, where it was like just at the end of like Alara block stuff and like Lorwyn block, and just
it's powerful stuff. That's good stuff.
But it also means that we have mono rocks like Monosilix from friggin' Alara, which is just like, a mana filter thing. Or there's just so many like terrible cards from the olden days, like Resounding Silence, which was a 4 mana, like remove target attacking creature from the game, or 5 in a Bant to cycle it. It's just like, what the hell? Look, we had
on the reverse side of that coin, though. There's a lot of new cards coming out nowadays that have propelled a lot of those older cards upward.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
I mean, think
thinking
about
like
it.
big bads are like popular commanders from like 2011 that just aren't a thing anymore. Like Rafik, you can make a banger Rafik deck
You know what?
nowadays with all of these cool like auras and
I
like
think the time
enchantress
has come to
support
make
cards.
Rafik into the terror that he used to be back in the day. Like used to be, you sat down with the Rafik deck, you would die before your second turn just because people knew what was coming.
Same thing with Prosh and Gave.
Oh yeah.
And like
the thought Adele
I
or
will
Sun
happily get on
Quan
my soapbox constantly. These banes of 2013, 2014 are perfectly fine in modern commander context because everything around them has gotten a lot more powerful,
but they
like
still do work,
so they
man.
can compete with it, but they're still good cards. Like
Rafik is so good.
At the time, it was one of those cards you didn't really have to try, but we
No.
also didn't have the answers, the sandpaper and interaction that we have 15 years into the future that we have now, where like a Voltron or like a commander damage kind of commander is just like, that's just
doable.
it's a thing that you can do. Cool. Love that for you. Versus just being the big bag, the boogie monster that you said, please, actually, can you put that deck away? I do not want to play against that. Whereas, like, I guarantee you, like, if you bring a Rafik deck to Vegas, people are gonna beg to play against it because they're like, these new players, they've never played against some of these commanders before.
My Tuvasa deck is a secret Rafik deck. It always has been. It's just
because you want to relive that glory days, but you are not willing to. I'm gonna be nice here. You are not willing to like potentially paint that target on your back based on commander players from 13 years ago, potential like PTSD or
look,
just
man,
like
you get burned,
terrible
right?
flashbacks.
Exactly.
It's a completely different game than it was 15 years ago.
Boy, ain't that the truth, man. If I pull out,
and I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. I think there's a reason why Commander has grown as quickly and as explosively as it has been, and there's you could probably map the power level increase of the average Magic card to the popularity growth of Commander. Like the data scientist in me says there is a correlation between 100%,
100%. Dude, one of the most insightful things I ever heard from somebody was I had Covert Go Blue on the show, and we were sitting there talking.
I love him.
And I was like, man, you are like a tournament grinder and a standard player and all these things. Why are you doing Commander stuff? And he's like, because one day I sat and I looked and I realized all the Commander players are getting all the fun cards and we're just getting all the boring kind of like tournament-y cards. And I wanted to play with the fun cards too. And I was like, yeah. I mean, yeah. WotC at some point decided like, hey, Commander players are also players. What if we just made more cards for them?
Well, I mean, hey, isn't
legacy, a couple years to figure it out,
legacy run like there's like this top however many legacy decks are all built around commander cards, or like,
dude,
commander cards are in like most legacy decks nowadays. Like there's an initiative deck.
If you want to find somebody who hates Commander, you will never find someone who hates Commander more than a legacy grinder who just like, your stupid mechanics keep just ruining my format. Like initiative and monarch.
Let me show you how low and just how much of a grip Commander has on legacy. You know Pyrogoyf from this Tarmogoyf Jund deck. That is like if you're playing red, you play that card in your legacy deck. From what I've heard. Funny. Or like there was a Apex Devastator legacy deck. There still kind of is.
The card is good though.
You basically you cascade and it's a Tybalt's Trickery deck, but your payoff is Apex Devastator. the Timmiest of Timmy commander cards outside of Primal Surge. Yeah, there's the
But dude,
initiative decks
Pyrogoyf is like
from
suddenly like a all-star in cubes, and or like Gut
yeah.
from friggin'
They're not
Baldur's
even
Gate.
playing. They're not even playing other Tarmogoyfs and Lurgoyfs in their decks. It's just
No,
it's a
it
it's a
comes into
card
play.
that comes in and removes a thing, or it's burn.
Yeah, it just nugs you for $1 billion and turns into a Tarmogoyf. It's
Yeah.
funny, man. It's like, but they get so mad at us. And it's like, I get these messages every day from bitter, angry Legacy players. I'm like, look, I'm
My
sorry.
affinity deck that I've had for 15 years is no longer the exact 60.
I'm like, your affinity deck has never been the exact 60, but like, it's more like, I can't. Wati has decided to make these things legal in your format. It's not my fault. Like,
It's also not your job.
no, it's not my format. Not my, like, I love Legacy. I think it's fine, but like, Commander's where they're making cards. I'm sorry.
The player market share says make cards for Commander, and I'm not saying that to be standoffish. It's just you go where the money is.
Well, it's like
they're
Mark
a business.
Rosewater hates Commander. He does not like political play. He doesn't like multiplayer play. He doesn't really like the things Commander does. However, he is also not an idiot, and he knows like if
that's
I'm
where his
running
players
a business,
are playing.
If
so I'm going to surround
business,
myself with people like Gavin, with people like Corey, with people like
who
Ellie
know and love making
Megan
Commander cards.
Smith and Chris Mooney.
Exactly. It's like, look, dude, if all of our players want to do a thing, why would I not give them the thing they want to do? I'm sorry.
They're the reason why I get to do what I do in the first place.
Right. Exactly. It's like, look, you guys want to play these cards as Commander? Okay, fine. I'm just going to make Commander cards. Whatever. That's like, I still get to make Magic cards. You guys get to play Magic cards. We're all happy. Except for the Legacy players who are sitting there waiting for their pure Magic to come back. And I'm like, look, the children are live.
You could even draw. I don't know the truth to this, so take this with a grain of salt. I am purely speculating right now. That mentality of, hey, like there's a lot of Commander players. We should make a bunch of powerful Commander cards to get people more excited about Commander. That's how we got these Commander staples.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to do a good thing. They were trying to do the quote unquote right thing that they thought at the time. They've
just
overshot on a couple of them, like Dockside Extortionist, which they have blatantly said, hey, we missed the mark on that one.
I can tell you that story right now.
Yeah.
Dockside Extortionist exists because the designer at the time, Glenn Jones, was like, hey, you know what? Commander seems to be missing a lot of, like, these games are going very long, and we were trying to think that we wanted to make a card that would be good for high-powered players, and we wanted to be, like, fast and get some acceleration, so we created Dockside. And I'm like, yeah, and in doing so, you upended the whole format.
In that context, they did hit the mark.
Sure, but they also hit every other mark, because if I'm like aiming for like, you know, one window in a building and I blow up the building, I hit that window.
Yeah, you technically did.
You know, but like Arcane Signet is maybe a safer example. Is like it exists because they were like, look, in Brawl, we were trying to make Brawl things work. There was no real good mana fixing, so we needed to make a card that would be good to play. And we were like, oh, what about a 2-mana rock? And it turns out that was like wrong. And
Commander was just an innocent bystander in the situation, because every card is legal in our format, and because it's legal in Brawl, it's legal here too.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, oh, Brawl is Commander Light, and so all the cards in there are going to go to Commander anyways. You put Command Tower in there. What do you want us to do? But there's just like, I think we came through an era where they were where all the designers were like hyper spikes and tournament players who were like tasked with making cards for Commander and didn't necessarily know what the Commander players were looking for. They were just like, look, you guys, your games are slow. How can we fix this? And they did. And they didn't realize that games being slow was the point. It's like
games being slow at the time was a feature, not a bug.
Playing your 9-drops was the point, right? Like the point of Commander.
Getting to your 9-drops faster, I'm all for it.
Sure. But then they're making all these cards that make those 9-drops pointless and unplayable.
Turn 3.
Right. Like, and it's fine. We're just in a different epoch now. It's like Magic, Commander is a different place. The people who play it, the vast majority of players of Commander started with Commander, have never played anything else, don't know this ancient history, don't care. And that's fine. That's fine. They don't care. They don't need to care. I'm happy they're having fun. However, when those kids come up and say, like, you guys need to change commander to fit our needs now. And I'm like, well, you guys can still play your game and we can still play our game, and it's
I
fine.
have a take. I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm going to behave.
Yeah, like
I don't want to make your DMs very vitriolic and the replies when this goes live even worse. I have an opinion. I'm going to keep it to myself. We're being responsible here.
It's fine. The point is, like, staples don't matter as much as you think they do.
Yeah.
And
the staple you think is staple is also less of a staple than you probably think too.
Yeah. And seriously, like, when people are like, oh, you guys need to ban Soul Ring because that is too broken and ruins games, I'm like, Soul Ring lets 7-drop commanders exist, right? Like,
Jeweled Lotus also lets them exist, but like,
yes, but did we need a Jeweled Lotus? Maybe we didn't need a Jeweled Lotus.
Who knows?
But
Soul Ring is so ingrained in the fabric of Commander and its fundamental identity that it's pretty much unbannable.
It's like, would you ban Brainstorm from Legacy? The Legacy players would kill you. They would dismember you, right? Like, that would just be the end of the story.
It is so ubiquitous.
It is the pillar that holds up the format.
Yes.
And like,
if you wanna ban Soul Ring, play a commander that literally you cannot help cast it with a Soul Ring, like Brian Kibler went and did. Yeah. He built an Omnath, literally only pips in the mana costs deck, just to prove you can build a deck without Soul Ring and it's still gonna be good. Granted, you're also Brian Kibler, so like any deck you build is gonna look good.
When you're one of the best players of all time, you can get away with things, it turns out.
But the principle of the matter is, if you want to not play that card, any that card, you don't have to, and there's a way to do it otherwise. But if you want to play that card, play that card.
But pretty much, I think that's a good place for us to kind of call this.
Yeah,
because this has been a wildly soapboxy episode. But you know what, man, I love talking to you.
This is what you wanted. I was just happy to oblige. you wanted to mildly vent, geek out. You got that emotional roller coaster. You got that catharsis.
You know what?
I'm just happy that I could be a catalyst for you to do so.
There are times when, like, this show is like, I want to interview interesting people about cool, different things about themselves. And then there are times where I'm like, I just need to get this, like, rant off my chest, and I need somebody who is just a face that
you just happen to kill two birds with one stone.
Like, give me a comfort, like, give me a comfortable person that I can just dump on, and it'll be great.
I'd also like to think that I challenge you at times as well, because we don't see eye to eye on absolutely everything.
No,
but we don't let that come between us.
No, that's not. I mean, like, that's why I respect your value. That's why I respect your opinion so much on, like, when I'm building decks or whatever, because you see things in a very different light than I do. You and I are friends, but we're not necessarily aligned on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not a lot of things, but there's something
we don't sit at a lot of the similar game tables.
Yeah, and that's fine.
But we like this. The end result is still the same.
Yeah, and it's
that's just a common thing that people are going to run into in this community. Like, I love the CDH players. There's CDH players out there that are like some of my best friends in all of Magic, but I am not a CDH player. I just enjoy them as people. And
pretty
that's
much
okay.
I mean, I've discovered that I will happily play CDH if I'm playing with my friends.
Yeah.
And we're all just very chill about it, and nobody cares. I don't want to do it in a tournament setting. I don't want to do it in a setting where something is on the line. I would rather just sit and play Magic with my buddies and have nothing to care about, but whatever. It's fine. It's fun, man. It's like, I think people need to just relax and stop trying to make pronouncements that are
I'm going to make the proclamation from on high, which is a very great, like, not Italian American goodbye of, hey, we're saying goodbye, but it's going to take us 25 minutes.
All right, dude.
The cure for talking about magic is playing magic, or whatever you guys say. Whatever that quote is that I just
that
butchered.
is my 100% like log line right there.
That's what this boils down to.
The cure for talking about magic is playing magic, baby.
So just
thank you for joining me, buddy.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I'm going to do the end game now. If people want to find you, where could they go?
Where I'm at is unimportant. The places that keep a roof over my head are much more important. So if you're a fan of like Elder Dragon Hijinks, Commander at Home, or just generally video-based Magic gameplay content, chances are you're like giving that channel ad revenue, which in turn goes into my pocket and allows me to pay my rent and my grocery bills. And I appreciate that.
Good enough, man. It's like, and let's be real here. EK does more work than you think for more people than you know.
Just because I'm only editing for those 2 channels at this point doesn't mean I'm consulting on another 6 or like, just actively saying like, hey, I'm too busy, please go talk to Callahan. Hey, I'm too busy, please go talk to this person. They're great, I have trained them myself.
You're the best, man. I love you so much.
I appreciate you too. Yeah. glad we got to do this, and I'm glad like I got my heart rate going. My Apple Watch that I never wear says, hey, congratulations, you've been working out for the last hour. That never happens.
Oh man. All right. And as always, my friends, you can find me at Gear Report Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at YouTube every Tuesday, thanks to my editor, Dan. And also, you can see me on Shivam and Wheeler Love Magic, where me and Ben Wheeler sit and talk about every single set in Magic. And on the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast, which comes out monthly, where me and my friend John sit and talk about Dragonlance novels. But remember, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.